There are 7 stages to empire collapse. 7 predictable, mathematical steps that take a superpower from dominance to irrelevance. And throughout history, not a single empire has skipped a stage. Not one has reversed the sequence. Once you hit stage 5, stage 6 and 7 become inevitable. It doesn't matter how powerful you are. It doesn't matter how much gold you have or how many nuclear weapons or how advanced your technology is. The pattern is mathematical, and empires don't escape mathematics. I've studied every major empire collapse in the last 500 years, and the same 7 stages show up every single time. No exceptions, no variations, just mathematical certainty. Spain went through all 7 stages between 1588 and 1700. They controlled half the world's gold and silver. They had the most powerful military in Europe. They were the first true global empire. Within a century, they were broke. Their currency was worthless. Their military couldn't win battles. They became a third-rate power that never recovered. Britain went through all 7 stages between 1914 and 1970. They ruled a quarter of the world's land surface. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the financial capital of the planet. Within 56 years, the empire was gone. The currency collapsed. They became America's follower, not its equal. The Soviet Union went through all 7 stages between 1985 and 1991. Nuclear weapons, global reach, superpower status. It collapsed in 6 years. Not from war, from economic implosion. A superpower with 40,000 nuclear weapons ceased to exist because the money ran out. 3 empires. 7 stages each. Same pattern, same outcome. And here's what should terrify you. The United States is currently at stage 5. We've completed the first 5 stages in the exact same order as every empire before us. Stage 6 is starting right now. Stage 7 comes next. This is the story of how empires die, why the pattern is mathematical, why America can't escape it, and why most people won't see it coming until it's too late. If you want to understand what's really happening to America's economy, currency, and future, hit that like button right now. Because what I'm about to show you isn't taught in schools. It's not discussed on mainstream news. But it's happened 3 times already in the exact same way. Let me show you the 7 stages. Before we talk about America, you need to see the pattern play out in history. 3 times, 3 empires, same 7 stages, same devastating end. Let's start with Spain. In 1500, after Columbus reached the Americas, Spain hit the lottery. They discovered the richest silver mines in human history in Peru and Mexico. By 1550, Spanish ships were hauling 200 tons of silver per year back to Europe. By 1600, over 400 tons annually. That's not wealth. That's obscene, unimaginable wealth. Spain controlled more money than the rest of Europe combined. The Spanish real became the world's reserve currency. Every merchant wanted Spanish silver. Every king borrowed from Spanish banks. Spain had the most powerful military in the world. Their empire stretched across Europe, the Americas, the Philippines, and parts of Africa. King Philip II ruled more territory than any monarch in history. In Madrid, the royal palace gleamed with gold. Spanish nobles wore silk from China and jewels from India. The Spanish Armada was the most feared naval force on earth. Spain was the superpower, and everyone knew it. They believed their wealth was permanent. They believed God had chosen them to rule the world. They believed the silver would flow forever. And then the 7 stages began. Spain fought wars everywhere at once. Against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy, wars in the Philippines, wars across the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military bases on 4 continents. The cost was massive. In 1580, military spending consumed 60% of Spain's annual revenue. 60%. And it still wasn't enough to win all these wars at the same time. The Dutch rebellion alone cost Spain billions in today's money. It dragged on for 80 years. 80 years of constant warfare, draining money faster than silver ships could bring it home. Spain was bleeding money on multiple fronts simultaneously, and they couldn't stop. Every time they tried to pull back from one war, another crisis erupted somewhere else. The empire had become too big to defend efficiently, but they couldn't admit that. So they kept fighting, kept spending, kept bleeding silver into wars they couldn't win. The wars cost more than Spain's tax revenue could cover. Even with all that silver pouring in from the Americas, they couldn't pay the bills. So they did what every failing empire does. They debased the currency. Spanish coins were supposed to be pure silver, but the government started mixing in copper. At first, just 10% copper, then 25%, then 50%. By 1620, Spanish silver coins were 75% copper. The face value stayed the same. A coin marked 1 real was still called 1 real, but merchants weren't stupid. They knew the coins had less silver. Prices exploded. A loaf of bread that cost 1 real in 1550 cost 4 reals by 1620. Working people got destroyed. Their wages stayed the same in nominal terms, but everything cost 4 times as much. The middle class vanished. People who had been comfortable became poor overnight. And here's the key. The government kept saying everything was fine. They kept insisting the coins had the same value. They passed laws making it illegal to charge different prices for debased coins. But you can't legislate away economic reality. Currency debasement didn't solve the problem. Spain needed more money. So they borrowed from Italian and German bankers. They borrowed massive amounts. In 1557, just 40 years after hitting the jackpot with American silver, Spain declared bankruptcy. They couldn't pay their loans. They defaulted. The bankers restructured the debt. Spain promised to pay. 2 years later, in 1560, Spain declared bankruptcy again. Then again in 1575, then again in 1596, then again in 1607. 5 bankruptcies in 50 years. Each time, Spain promised reform. Each time, they borrowed more and defaulted again. The richest empire on earth couldn't stop going bankrupt. The interest payments alone were killing them. By 1600, Spain was spending 40% of revenue just paying interest on old debt, not paying down the debt, just paying interest. And they had to borrow more money to make those interest payments. Think about that. The richest country in the world, with unlimited silver flowing in from America, couldn't pay its bills. That's how fast the debt spiral destroyed them. Here's the killer. Spain had unlimited silver, but it destroyed their economy. Because when money is easy, no one produces anything. Spanish nobles considered manual work beneath them. Why farm when you can import food? Why manufacture when you can buy from other countries? Spain imported everything. French wine, Italian silk, Dutch textiles, English wool. The silver came in from America and flowed right back out to pay for imports. Spain became a conduit. Wealth flowed through them, but didn't stay. By 1640, Spain produced almost nothing. They grew almost no food. They manufactured almost no goods. Everything was imported, paid for with silver. Spanish workshops closed. Farms sat abandoned. The skilled craftsmen who once made Spain's armor, ships, and textiles either left the country or died poor. Spain's economy hollowed out completely. And then the silver mines started running dry. Production peaked around 1,600 and began declining. By 1650, the mines were producing half what they had 50 years earlier. The money stopped flowing, and Spain had no productive economy to fall back on. By 1650, the economy was collapsing. Prices kept rising. Jobs disappeared. Crime exploded. Madrid's streets filled with beggars and thieves. The productive people left. Skilled workers emigrated to France, England, the Netherlands, countries that actually built things. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. Everyone consuming, nobody producing. The population actually declined. Spain's population fell from 8 million in 1600 to 7 million by 1700, not from war or plague, from economic collapse. People literally starved or left. By 1640, merchants across Europe stopped accepting Spanish reals at face value. They wanted Dutch guilders or English pounds instead. Spain's currency, once demanded by everyone, became worthless outside Spain. When you lose reserve currency status, the money that foreign countries were holding comes flooding back. All those debased Spanish coins poured back into Spain. Hyperinflation hit. Prices doubled, then doubled again. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1648, they lost the Netherlands, their richest territory. By 1659, they lost dominance in Europe to France. By 1700, Spain was finished as a great power. They went from the richest, most powerful empire on earth to a second-rate nation in 150 years. And they never recovered. Spain today is a nice country to visit, but it's irrelevant on the world stage. That's what imperial collapse looks like. Fast forward 300 years to Britain in 1914. At that point, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. 1/4 of the world's land, 400 million people. The sun literally never set on British territory because they had colonies on every continent. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. London was the financial capital of the world. Every major trade deal was done in pounds. Every central bank held British government bonds. Britain was the superpower. The British Navy ruled the seas. British banks financed the world. British companies dominated global trade. India alone generated massive wealth for Britain. They extracted resources, collected taxes, and controlled trade routes. Britain looked invincible. They'd been the dominant power for over a century, and they believed it would last forever. And then the 7 stages began, again. Britain had to defend colonies on 6 continents: India, Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, the Pacific. The cost was enormous, even in peacetime. Then World War I started. Britain could have stayed neutral, but they jumped in. The war cost them $44 billion. That's about $1.2 trillion in today's money. They borrowed most of it from the United States. Britain won the war, but they bankrupted themselves to do it. By 1918, Britain owed America more money than they could ever repay. The creditor had become the debtor. They tried to maintain the empire anyway, kept all the colonies, kept the military commitments, kept pretending they were still the dominant power. But the foundation had cracked. The pound sterling was backed by gold. That's what made it the reserve currency. But World War I drained Britain's gold reserves. They'd shipped gold to America to pay for weapons and supplies. By 1920, Britain's gold reserves were half of what they'd been in 1914. But they tried to go back on the gold standard anyway at the pre-war rate. This was a disaster. The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive. Their economy stalled. In 1931, Britain abandoned the gold standard completely. The pound crashed, losing 25% of its value overnight. The world's reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. Britain never paid off World War I debt. And then World War II started. Another $120 billion in costs. More borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain owed over $30 billion to the United States and Canada. That was more than Britain's entire GDP. They'd won 2 world wars, but they were financially destroyed. Britain didn't finish paying off World War II debt until 2006. 61 years of payments. That's how deep the debt spiral went. The last 4 stages happened fast. Britain couldn't afford the empire anymore. In 1947, they gave up India, the crown jewel. Over the next 20 years, they lost everything. Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. The pound kept falling. Social trust collapsed. Britain went from superpower to America's junior partner in 56 years. Today, Britain has a nice military, a permanent UN Security Council seat, and nuclear weapons. But everyone knows the truth. They're a former empire. The glory days aren't coming back. The Soviet collapse is the most recent, and it shows how fast the final stages can happen. In 1985, the USSR was a superpower. Nuclear weapons, a massive military, control over Eastern Europe, global influence. They competed with America in every way. They'd put the first satellite in space. They matched America militarily. They had 40,000 nuclear warheads. They had the largest tank force on Earth. They had submarines in every ocean. From the outside, they looked invincible. 6 years later, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. The USSR had been running through the stages for decades. Military overextension was built into the system. They spent 15-20% of GDP on the military, trying to match America everywhere on the planet. But their economy was dying. Soviet factories produced junk. Farms failed. By the 1,980 seconds, they were importing grain. A country with the best farmland on Earth couldn't feed itself. The ruble was never a real currency. Nobody wanted it. Even Soviet citizens used dollars when they could. The government had to buy foreign goods with gold and oil because no one accepted rubles. When oil prices crashed in 1985, the system broke. The USSR ran out of money. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe left. The empire vanished in a year. On the 26th of December 1991, the Soviet Union officially ceased to exist, from superpower to nothing in 6 years. Not because of war, because the economy collapsed. Mikhail Gorbachev tried to reform, tried to save the system. But by 1985, they were already at stage 5. The pattern was locked in. Reform came too late. Same 7 stages, same result, 3 empires, 3 times, same pattern. Now let me show you why this pattern is inevitable, why every empire follows these 7 stages, and why no empire has ever escaped once they hit stage 5. It starts with becoming the global reserve currency. Your money becomes the money the world uses for trade, for savings, for conducting international business. This seems like pure advantage, and at first, it is. When everyone needs your currency, you can print more of it and the world absorbs it. You can borrow unlimited amounts because everyone wants to hold your bonds. You can run deficits forever because foreign countries need to hold your currency to do business. Spain had the silver. Britain had the pound. America has the dollar. This privilege feels like infinite power, but it's actually a trap that destroys empires from the inside. Because here's what happens. When you have unlimited money, you stop making hard choices. You don't have to choose between butter and guns. You can have both. You don't have to choose between spending at home and spending abroad. You can do both. You don't have to balance your budget. You can just borrow more. This is where the trap begins. With unlimited borrowing power, you expand your military everywhere. More bases, more commitments, more wars. You believe you can afford it because money seems infinite. Spain fought on 4 continents. Britain defended colonies on 6 continents. The USSR tried to match America globally. Every empire overextends because the reserve currency makes it possible. But here's the problem. Military spending doesn't create wealth. It consumes it. Every dollar spent on the military is a dollar not spent on building factories, improving infrastructure, or developing technology that makes you more productive. And once you make commitments, you can't easily back out. If you abandon an ally, other allies lose faith. If you close a base, enemies fill the vacuum. Military overextension becomes a one-way street. You can expand, but you can't contract without looking weak. So you keep spending, keep expanding, keep bleeding money, because the alternative is admitting you overreached. And empires never admit weakness until it's too late. Eventually, even with reserve currency status, the debt becomes too large. Tax revenue can't cover spending, so you debase the currency. You print more money, mix copper into silver coins, abandon the gold standard, whatever form it takes. At first, the world accepts it because they have no alternative. They still need your currency for trade. So you keep borrowing, keep spending, keep debasing. This creates a debt spiral. You borrow to pay interest on previous borrowing. The debt grows exponentially. Spain declared bankruptcy 5 times in 50 years. Britain borrowed until they couldn't borrow anymore. The USSR ran out of gold and oil to trade. Each time you debase the currency or add more debt, you think it's temporary. You think you'll fix it later, but you never do. The political pressure to keep spending is too strong, and the reserve currency status makes it too easy to keep going. The politicians promise reform after the next crisis, after the next war, after the next election, but the reforms never come, because cutting spending means angering powerful groups. Raising taxes means angering voters. Defaulting means destroying your credit, so they just keep borrowing and printing. Here's the hidden killer. Reserve currency status destroys your productive economy. When you can print money or borrow unlimited amounts, you stop producing real goods. Why manufacture when you can import? Why farm when you can buy food from other countries? Why build when you can purchase? Spain stopped producing and imported everything. Britain's manufacturing declined as they managed the empire. The USSR never built a competitive economy. America has shipped manufacturing to China and Mexico. You become dependent on imports, dependent on your currency's purchasing power, dependent on other countries accepting your money. This works perfectly fine as long as your currency maintains its value and global acceptance. But when that changes, you're in serious trouble. Because once productive capacity is gone, you can't get it back quickly. You can't just restart factories that closed 20 years ago. The skilled workers are gone. The supply chains are gone. The knowledge is gone. Rebuilding takes decades. And empires at stage 4 don't have decades. They have years. As the real economy dies, society breaks down. Good jobs disappear. People can't afford basic necessities. Crime rises. Trust in institutions collapses. The best and brightest leave for countries that still produce and build. Spain lost skilled workers to France and England. Britain saw emigration accelerate after World War II. The USSR would have seen massive emigration if borders had been open. The social contract breaks. People stop believing in their institutions. They stop believing in their currency. They stop believing in their government. This is the beginning of the end. And here's the cruel part. By the time social breakdown becomes obvious, it's too late to fix the underlying problems. The debt is too large. The productive capacity is too diminished. The currency is too debased. You're already locked into stages 6 and 7. Eventually, confidence breaks. Foreign countries start looking for alternatives. They diversify away from your currency. They create new payment systems. They stop holding your bonds. This is the point of no return. When reserve currency status goes, all the money that foreign countries were holding comes flooding back home. Decades of printed money returns at once. Hyperinflation hits. The currency collapses. Without reserve currency status, you can't fund the military. Without the military, you can't maintain the empire. The empire contracts rapidly, often in just years or months. And here's the cruel mathematical reality. By the time you reach stage 5, stages 6 and 7 are already locked in. The debt is too large. The currency is too debased. The productive economy is too hollowed out. The social trust is too broken. You'd need decades of discipline to fix it. Balanced budgets, rebuilt manufacturing, restored currency backing. But empires at stage 5 don't have decades. They have years, maybe months. This is the mechanism. This is why the pattern is mathematical. And this is why no empire has ever escaped once they hit stage 5. Now let's talk about America, and why we're further down this path than anyone wants to admit. The United States has over 750 military bases in more than 80 countries. We have troops stationed in 150 countries. That's more military presence than any empire in history. We're committed to defending Europe through NATO. We're committed to defending Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines in Asia. We're fighting in the Middle East. We're countering Russia in Eastern Europe. We're countering China in the Pacific. Our military budget is $850 billion per year. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. And it's still not enough. We're stretched thin. Equipment is aging. We can't recruit enough people. We have commitments we can't fulfill if multiple crises happen simultaneously. If China invades Taiwan, Russia attacks NATO, and Iran closes the Persian Gulf all at the same time, we can't respond to everything. We're overextended. And we can't pull back without looking weak. Every base we close, every ally we abandon, sends a message that America is retreating. So we stay overextended, bleeding money to maintain commitments we made 50 years ago, just like Spain, just like Britain, just like the USSR. In 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard. The dollar became pure fiat currency, backed by nothing but trust in the US government. Since then, we've printed money like crazy. The M2 money supply has increased from $600 billion in 1971 to over $21 trillion today. That's a 400% increase. Just since 2020, we've printed over $6 trillion. In 4 years, we printed more money than existed in the entire US economy in 1971. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. What cost $1 in 1971 costs $7.60 today. Think about what that means. Your grandparents' dollar could buy almost 8 times more than your dollar can today. That's not inflation. That's currency destruction. We're not mixing copper into silver coins. We're just printing unlimited paper dollars. The mechanism is different, but the result is the same. Currency debasement. And just like Spain, we keep insisting everything is fine. We call it quantitative easing or modern monetary theory. We give it fancy names, but it's the same thing Spain did. It's currency debasement. The United States currently owes $36 trillion. That's 122% of GDP. We crossed the 100% threshold in 2012, and we've added $15 trillion in debt since then. Interest payments on the debt are now approaching $1 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on defense. Let that sink in. We spend more paying interest on old debt than on our entire military. We run massive deficits every single year. In 2024, during peace and economic growth, we ran a $1.8 trillion deficit. We're borrowing $1.8 trillion per year just to keep the government running. We're borrowing to pay interest on previous borrowing. That's the textbook definition of a debt spiral. And here's the terrifying part. The debt is accelerating. We added the first trillion in debt over 200 years. We're now adding a trillion every 100 days. At this rate, we'll owe $50 trillion within 10 years. And nobody knows what happens when the world's reserve currency owes that much money. Spain declared bankruptcy 5 times. Britain borrowed until they collapsed. The USSR ran out of money. America doesn't make things anymore. We design products. We create software. We run financial markets. But we don't manufacture physical goods. Our trade deficit is over $800 billion per year. We import $800 billion more than we export every single year. We import almost everything. Electronics from China, cars from Japan and Germany, steel from everywhere, even basic medicines come from overseas. We're dependent on foreign supply chains for virtually everything, including critical military components. During COVID, we couldn't even make enough masks. Masks, one of the simplest products you can imagine. We had to import them from China because we'd shut down our own manufacturing capacity. We can't make our own semiconductors. We can't make our own steel. We can't even make our own antibiotics. If China stopped shipping to us tomorrow, our economy would collapse within weeks. In 1970, manufacturing was 25% of the US economy. Today it's 11%. We've gutted our productive capacity in the name of cheap imports. Just like Spain imported everything while silver flowed out, we import everything while dollars flow out. And just like Spain, when the money stops flowing, we're in serious trouble. Trust in American institutions is at all-time lows. Congress has a 20% approval rating. Media trust is at record lows. People don't believe their government, their institutions, or each other. Crime is rising in major cities. Homelessness is exploding. Drug overdoses kill over 100,000 Americans every year. That's more than died in the Vietnam War every single year. The best and brightest are checking out. Fertility rates have collapsed. Young people can't afford homes. Middle-class families are struggling. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, can't fix infrastructure, can't reform anything, can't build anything without years of delays. Life expectancy is falling. That's not supposed to happen in developed countries, but it's happening here. The social fabric is tearing apart. Mental health crises, obesity epidemics, education scores falling, family formation collapsing. These are all symptoms of stage 5 social breakdown. We've completed 5 stages. We're at the same point where the Soviet Union was in 1985, Britain was in 1945, and Spain was in 1640. Stage 6 is loss of reserve currency status, and it's starting right now. BRICS nations are creating alternative payment systems. China and Russia trade in yuan and rubles. Saudi Arabia is accepting yuan for oil. Central banks around the world are buying gold and reducing dollar holdings. In 2022, the US froze Russia's dollar reserves. That sent a message to every country on earth. If you hold dollars, America can take them away whenever they want. Countries are responding by diversifying away from the dollar as fast as they can. The dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 70% in 2000 to 58% today. That's a massive shift. And it's accelerating. The cracks are forming. Let me tell you what happens next if we follow the pattern. Stage 6 is reserve currency collapse. When countries stop using the dollar for trade, when they stop holding dollars as reserves, all those dollars come flooding back to America. We've printed tens of trillions of dollars over the decades. That money is held all around the world. When it comes back, prices explode. Your savings get destroyed. Your retirement accounts become worthless. Everything you've worked for your entire life loses value overnight. This isn't theory. This is what happened in Spain, Britain, and the USSR. The currency collapses, and regular people get wiped out. The people who see it coming can protect themselves. They move to hard assets, gold, land, productive businesses. But most people don't see it coming. They trust the government when it says everything is fine, and they lose everything. Stage 7 is imperial collapse. Without reserve currency status, we can't fund the military at current levels. Without the military, we can't maintain commitments around the world. Allies abandon us. Bases close. The empire contracts rapidly. This doesn't happen slowly over decades. Spain took 60 years to go through stages 6 and 7. Britain took 25 years. The Soviet Union took 6 years. And each collapse was faster than the one before. The pattern accelerates. Every empire thinks they're different. Every empire thinks the rules don't apply to them. Spain thought their silver mines made them invincible. Britain thought the empire and Royal Navy made them permanent. The Soviet Union thought communist ideology made them unstoppable. They were all wrong. America thinks technology makes us different. We think the dollar's dominance is permanent. We think we're exceptional. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The pattern is mathematical. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot print unlimited money without consequences. You cannot maintain a global empire without a productive economy. You cannot avoid stages 6 and 7 once you've completed stages 1 through 5. The sequence is locked in. The only question is timing. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says it's coming. And when it comes, it won't be slow, it'll be sudden. A currency crisis triggers a debt crisis, triggers a political crisis. Overnight, everything changes. Maybe America will be the first empire to escape the pattern. Maybe we'll reform in time. Maybe we'll rebuild the productive economy, balance the budget, and restore the currency. Maybe this time really is different. The pattern is played out 3 times. Same 7 stages, same outcome. Spain, Britain, the Soviet Union, all gone. And America is at stage 5. Since 2020, we've accelerated through every stage. Printed more money, increased debt faster, extended military commitments further, hollowed out production more, fractured society deeper. We're not walking toward stages 6 and 7, we're sprinting. Subscribe to this channel right now, because when stages 6 and 7 hit, you'll want to understand what's happening and why. You'll want to know how to protect yourself and your family. The answers aren't hiding in the future. They're written in the past. History has shown us the pattern 3 times, and I'll keep showing you where to look. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Leave a comment if you think America can escape this pattern or if you think we're headed for the same fate as every empire before us. Because this matters. This is the most important story nobody's talking about. While everyone's distracted by politics and social media drama, the 7-stage collapse is playing out in real time. The 7 stages are real. The pattern is mathematical. And America is at stage 5. The question isn't if, it's when, and what you're going to do about it.